Hello everyone, the Nerdy Steve here, and today I want to talk about the Dominaria United spoilers that came out yesterday. I am very enthusiastic and always looking forward to anything spoiler related. I love Magic, I love Dominaria, and so I just wanted to talk about it, and I figured, what else am I going to do? Play Standard? So, first, can we look at these wonderful lands, which I know I will be buying and using on Arena, just like I say every time they release unique basic lands. I mean, these also exist in real life, but on Arena, I think I have all of them, except for maybe a couple of the different variations that came out early on Arena. But I'm a basic land lover. Wish we could use them more often. And I think these look absolutely amazing. I love the stained glass effect. And if I had to guess, these cards might be one of the most played stuff in the set, so you should probably stock up on them. And now let's go look at actual cards other than the basic lands. And we have Llanowar Loam Speaker, which is a 2-mana 1/3 that can tap to add 1 mana of any color. And then target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still a land, and you can only activate this as a sorcery. So we've seen this effect at this rate before in Standard very recently, and that was Paradise Druid, which was a 2/1 that had hexproof as long as it untapped, and you can tap it for 1 mana of any color. And I don't know if Llanowar Loam Speaker is as good as Paradise Druid. So one of the things that made Paradise Druid really wonderful was that you played it on turn 2 to ensure that you could play a mana, something that cost 4 on turn 3. And Llanowar Loam Speaker can still be killed. After you play on turn 2, your opponent can kill it, and then you untap and you only have 3 mana, as opposed to the Paradise Druids, you knew you would get 4. Now, that might be offset because Llanowar Loam Speaker is a 1/3, so a lot of 2 damage and 1 damage pinpoint removal from red won't be able to kill Llanowar Loam Speaker, which is somewhat of a benefit, and we don't know how the removal will look out in the new set, but it can still be killed with anything that destroys target creature, which I'm sure we'll get a new one in this set, but it can still be Infernal Grasped, right? And so that is a little to this card's detriment. However, the target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste is a really powerful ability. So there are a couple problems with cards like Paradise Druid, in that you draw them later in the game and it does really nothing. And a 3/3 creature attacking is very powerful, and it's more powerful than this 2/1, right? So that is a point, and obviously it's a point into Llanowar Loam Speaker's, benefit. So I don't know if that's good enough to make it better than Paradise Druid, but it is just something to consider. Oh, and also, sometimes in the ramp decks, all you draw are the Paradise Druids, or all you draw are your mana ramp things, and you don't draw any of the payoffs. And Llanowar Loam Speaker is much better in that situation, because it can then use your lands to deal damage instead of, doing nothing. So it just, those are comparisons. I'm sure it will see play. I'm sure it will be somewhat of a player. But will it be as popular and as powerful as Paradise Druid? I'm not too sure yet. The hexproof was really integral in this card being such a defining card in the metagame. So we'll see. Next, we have Evolved Sleeper, which is, for 1 black mana, it's a 1/1 that does a lot of stuff. So it becomes a 2/2, then it becomes a 3/3 with Death Touch, and then it gets bigger and bigger after you do that. So you have to put a lot of mana into it, and I'm not going to go through all the details of it because I want to bring up Ascendant Spirit, which is a card in the very similar vein as Evolved Sleeper or like Figure of Destiny in the past. And this what makes Evolved Sleeper better than Ascendant Spirit in some ways is that you can start attacking with it as a 2/2 on the second turn. And being able to not have to tap out or do something else that costs 1 mana is really important in these type of aggro decks and aggro situations, because you don't want to only play one threat necessarily on the first 2 turns, because that leaves you much more vulnerable to removal, specifically if you only have a 2/3 here. Like, you don't really want to tap out. Though Ascendant Spirit goes in a very different type of deck than Mono Black. But it's kind of like the same idea. So being able to attack with it as a 2/2 is really, really relevant. And it gets bigger much more quickly than Ascendant Spirit. And so I think this actually might be played on turn 4. If you cast it, it can become a 3/3 at instant speed without you tapping out or doing anything. And that's kind of a lot. And then afterwards, you can activate the third ability, which it puts a counter on it, then you draw a card and lose 1 life. So it is a very, very cheap way to sink your mana and draw more stuff. And I think it only requiring 1 black mana for the first stage or first activation or whatever you want to call it is going to be very, very, very relevant. And I think this card's going to be really, really good. It would surprise me if there wasn't other mono black support, because obviously this type of card requires there to be a more aggressive mono black deck. And with cards like Tenacious Underdog, it definitely, there is already kind of a skeleton for this type of deck. So it would surprise me if this wasn't seeing play and wasn't very, very popular. And then we have Shivan Devastator, which is for red and X. It is 0/0 creature, Dragon Hydra with flying and haste, and enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. This card excites me a lot. I don't know if it's gonna be great. It's definitely borderline on very, very, very powerful. But again, it is only 1 card. It does die to removal. It does get countered, right? But the flexibility of having a recurring card in mono red that can come out of nowhere for 4 mana, let's say it deals 3, it's going to deal 3 because it has, evasion and haste, like probably multiple times if your opponent doesn't have any direct removal. And I think this sits pretty well on the curve in a lot of these bigger aggressive decks. Like, there's a red white Boros deck going around in standard that I think that uses modified counters from Kamigawa, and I think this can fit kind of right in there with the what is it, the red 1 mana saga also from Neo Dynasty or Kamigawa. You can do that on turn 1. Then on turn 2, it isn't that exciting, right? But you can do this for 1 X = 1 and have a 2/2 flying haster out. And while that might not be particularly great and wonderful, the flexibility of Shivan Devastator being able to do something like that, and then as a top deck late in the game do X = 5 and have a 5/5 flying haste, I think is going to be very, very relevant and definitely played a lot in standard. I don't think it's going to be oppressive because, again, it does trade. It doesn't have trample, so it can be chump blocked by flyers if those are a thing. It doesn't. It's not really at a excessively powerful rate. So I think it's gonna be a player, maybe at worst as a one or two of in those type of aggressive strategies, but I think it will see play. And then we go on to Temporal Firestorm. And this card does a lot. So it is a 5 mana sorcery that has kicker of white and one and or blue and one. And choose up to X creatures and or planeswalkers you control, where X is the number of times this spell was kicked. Those permanents phase out. So with Temporal Firestorm, you can kick it one or two times. I believe it's only one or two times. And then you phase out things before it deals 5 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. So this is very interesting, and it requires some type of red, white, or red, blue, or Jeskai control deck. But 5 damage to deal with planeswalkers and creatures is a very, very powerful effect. Powerful effect. We see it used in cards like Burn Down the House, which is in Standard, because Standard has a lot of planeswalkers along with creatures, and those in a lot of the different aggro decks are often on the board at the same time. And being able to have a board wipe that can deal with all creatures and planeswalkers instead of just creatures is very, very important in Standard and probably will be after rotation. And this does that, but with the added effect as a more control oriented card where if you have your own creatures or planeswalkers, you can phase them out and keep them around for later. And that's, I don't know what the format is going to look like, no one will. But if there's a really, really powerful creature, control-ish creature that you want to cast to help, stabilize the board for a little bit, and then if you're ever able to phase it out and wipe the board, you're just gonna set yourself up for that much better of an opportunity to win the game. And I think if that type of deck exists, and it sometimes does naturally in Standard, Temporal Firestorm is going to be really, really great. And so, again, I don't think this will necessarily be a 4 of, because 5 mana is a lot. A lot. And it really requires there to be a need for a more control oriented red deck. But it's definitely playable, and it's definitely good, and I love this art going on because it has Jaya, and let's talk about Jaya. So we have Jaya, Fiery Negotiator, which is a new planeswalker. I mean, Jaya's old, you know, but for 4 mana, already happy with that. For a 4 loyalty planeswalker, and this is a lot to go on, and I want to talk about it because I think it does very interesting things. So the +1 is create a 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess. So prowess is an ability that triggers off whenever you cast a non-creature spell. This gets +1/+1, and it's important to note that that triggers off all the sagas in Kamigawa. So I brought it up before, but Kakazan, the red 1 mana saga, I should probably look it up, but that's fine. Kumano faces Kakazan, is that it? It counts for prowess. And that card's going to be doing a lot of work in the upcoming Standard format, but that is something that, would be in this type of deck, a more aggressive red Planeswalker deck. But it doesn't just create monk tokens. The -1 is exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them. You may play that card this turn, which we see in a similar ability in Chandra Dress to Kill on a Planeswalker, where you can kind of exile the top card and sometimes cast it. In Chandra's case, this you'll always be able to play one of those two, most likely. So this is going to be able to either give you creatures or find you more spells. And If you find a non-creature spell with the -1, it will pump all the things that all the monks you previously created. The -2 is a very interesting ability. So choose target creature an opponent controls, and whenever you attack this turn, Jaya deals damage equal to the number of attacking creatures to that creature. So if you have 4 creatures, you can choose an opponent's 4/4, and if you attack with 4 creatures, Jai will then deal 4 damage to that creature, which is sometimes what you really. So a lot of times in these mono red aggro decks, right? You want to be able to attack without losing your board, right? Because if your opponent has one good block, it's going to remove that creature that blocked from dealing damage every turn for the rest of the game. Obviously, that's what creature removal does. But if you can. So instead of like plussing to create a creature that will deal damage over time, or minusing to find a specific card that maybe will deal damage over time, Jaya is going to allow you to find that removal spell 100%, so you don't even have to go down that card, right? And maybe that doesn't make sense, but Jaya's ability to remove something, just like Chandra's ability from Kaladesh that deals 4 damage to a creature, that is really important in aggressive decks. Being able to get rid of a problem card before you to clear up your way to attack. It's just very powerful, very useful, and specifically the reason why this is good, maybe I'll actually get to this point, is a lot of the times when you're looking for the top card of your library for something, you're looking for a thing that can kill your opponent's creatures. And this Jaya can ensure that, assuming you have enough creatures, right? But that's why it's really important. The -8 does something when you cast an instant, a red instant or sorcery, you copy it twice. Never really going to be that relevant in constructed in standard, I'm sure. But you know what? If you make it work, you make it work, and I'm happy for you. But with all that being said, hope you liked this little overview of the spoiled cards so far. I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited for Dominaria. I didn't even talk about any of the other bonus or cool stuff they're going on in packs, and maybe I will. Who knows? But yeah, I hope y'all are having a great morning, evening, or afternoon wherever you are. And thanks for watching. Also, if you haven't already, you should totally like, comment, or subscribe. Bye.